Welcome back to another episode of the Simplified Organization Show, where real moms chat about real life, managing all that there is to do, and prioritizing our people while we do it. We want to banish overwhelm, fulfill our responsibilities, and stay cheerful while we do it, because it is a good work that God has called us to do. I'm your host, Misty Winkler. I'm a second generation homeschool mom of 5. I write and podcast at simplyconvivial.com and am author of the book, The Convivial Homeschool, Gospel Encouragement for Keeping Your Sanity While Living and Learning Alongside Your Kids. Today, I have part 2 of my conversation with Laney Homan. Laney is a wife of 25 years and a mother of 8 children. 5 boys and 3 girls, from 23 years old down to 6. She's the member success coordinator at Your Morning Basket and currently also homeschools her youngest 5 kids. Some of her favorite things include reading and visiting her local coffee shop for a treat. In part 1, we talked about handling life when we feel scattered and pulled in so many different directions. And today we're going to chat about keeping a truth-oriented mindset and cheerful attitude in the midst of all the details of life. So let's dig into part 2 now. So do you have any tips or insights to share about just kind of keeping our eyes on what's important and maintaining a good attitude while we might feel scattered or underwater?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is that shift of mindset of thinking about that it's about faithfulness, not completion.
Mhm.
We're not going to be able to do all the laundry and have it done. The dishes are going to be dirty in 10 minutes, even after we've eaten. It's a constant thing. And sometimes that can get very tedious and we can just get kind of grumpy about, what we have to do in the day to day. So I think for me, it's really just telling myself the truth about what my responsibilities are, what I need to do, and recognizing that these are all God given things. And, you know, it's a blessing that I have so many people to feed. It's a blessing that we have food to put on our table. It's a blessing that we have, these different things that keep us busy with the constancy. And sometimes keeping up is, it really requires you to kind of think about it in a different mindset. So I think the thing that I try to tell myself most often is just faithfulness in the little moment. We tend to look forward to when we're going to be faithful. I think often we're like, oh yes, when this is right now, we're about to wrap up our school year. I'm like, this summer I'm going to be able to, you know catch up on these things, that I'm going to be able to exercise more, and we always have this kind of future outlook of being faithful. I think that's our natural tendency, but honestly, where true faithfulness happens is in those everyday moments, those little things. It's our attitude and our mindset towards the people around us, and recognizing that, you know God knows whenever your life is going to go off the rails before you do. That's part of his plan as well. And so that we can just stop and recognize him and who he is, and then we can choose to be faithful in the moment of how we want to respond, how we want to act, and what we're going to carry out. And I think that that is just going through the motions is the most important thing for being able to walk in faithfulness, even when life is scattered and we don't maybe feel like doing the things that we need to be doing. In our world, the routines that we have in place, we can kind of fall back on those. I'm like, I can do this small thing. And I just have to check myself and make sure that my attitude in doing those small things is appropriate rather than self-pitying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely relate to that, thinking that faithfulness is something that happens after I get things under control. Like when I get to this point or get these things done, it's like that's what I need to have happen before I can be faithful. Or
Right.
it's a measure of if I'm faithful or not, if things are going basic, it boils down to if they're going my way. And that's not the way that God set up the world or the kind of faithfulness that he's called us to. He sends us those needs that are our responsibility to take care of, the medical emergencies and all of these things. He puts us in a place where we can serve others and care for people and just to be there. And that means that sometimes other things don't happen. The house doesn't stay clean, but we're being faithful that is faithfulness right there.
I think so. And like I said, for me, sometimes it really is just sitting down to look at all the things. I love the concept of that we can only do 2 things well or 3 things well at a time. And I'm like, oh, that's so encouraging to me whenever some things are falling apart around me. But then other times I'm like, but I can't eliminate these other things. Like I have, I have these things. They're all still there. I can't just compartmentalize them and say, oh, I'm just not going to give you attention right now. And I think that's part of where that scatteredness comes from, is feeling like we have so many things that are non-negotiable and we have to complete them all. But we have to realize even in at this particular moment, in this particular time, what is it that I need to be faithful with? And we can do that by recognizing what our responsibilities are, what our roles are, and then evaluating to see, what time dinner needs to be ready tonight because people have to leave, or, what time can we all gather together as a larger family so that we can celebrate a birthday? Or it's not all like negative things, but if we're not aware of all of the things that we have going on in our life, then it's very difficult to recognize where our priority needs to be for the moment. And that doesn't mean that we can just focus on 2 things like in the big picture, but that in those little moments, we do have to prioritize and pick and choose what is going to get our attention, even if it means for this minute or for this hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a way, sometimes that trying to pick only 2 things for a longer period of time, like, okay, so I'm only going to care about, 2 things, but there are more than 2 things. It's another way we fall into that all or nothing mindset. Like, what can I do all of? What can I, really do really well? And it's like, well, maybe right now you're supposed to do a lot of things, not up to the standards that you would like, because there are just so many pieces and parts of life to keep spinning so that people are educated and fed and clothed and
Yep, all those
family
things.
life.
And I think just being intentional about it, and
Mm-hmm.
in the day-to-day being very intentional about the things that we do, and then in the big picture recognizing that God knew that this was going to happen before I did, and he's got it under it's all in his control, even if it feels like it's completely out of control in my world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's always a path forward of faithfulness. God's made
Yes,
sure that there is a way to follow him in it all.
absolutely.
But thank you so much, Laney. This has been such an encouraging conversation.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
If you know a mom who's juggling a busy household like Laney, then pass a link on to this episode to her so she can also be encouraged. When you like, subscribe, and share these episodes, this show reaches more people. So thank you so much for sharing with your friends. After you share, head on over to simplyconvivial.com or find the link below to get on my email list so that you can get a link every time a new episode goes live. Plus, you'll also receive regular encouragement for digging into your role as a Christian wife and mother. It is important work, and we can increase our skill and motivation as we seek to do it for God's glory instead of our own by repenting, rejoicing, repeating.